A few moons ago, I did a review of the Spider-Man Rapid Reload Wrist Blaster thing, which was absolutely awful. And yet, you know, I got some flack because it's supposed to be a kid's toy and all that kind of stuff, but honestly, I have some issues with that because, well, if you look at all of the Marvel blasters that Hasbro releases, they're all pretty bad, at least for distance, because they're meant for kids. They're meant to be more toy fun than anything else, but I kind of argued that the thing got a bad performance ratio to price because this here is a blaster that was released a little bit before that, and yet I think offers kids a lot more in terms of play for literally the same exact price. This retailed at $19.99, while so did the Spider-Man blaster, and when these were being cleared out, they could be picked up for the princely sum of $14. This is another blaster that's very, very similar. It shoots 4 darts. You can see the barrels in there, but as you can tell, it's based off Captain America. It was meant to promote the Captain America Winter Soldier or whatever movie, and it's a pretty cool little thing. I know Nerf did put out another one of these. I think it was for the Marvel Civil War or whatever. That is similar, but not anywhere near as cool, and that's kind of starting the whole problem I have with what they're doing, because while this blaster is awful, at least for like a performance standpoint, I could argue that it's more useful and it's a heck of a lot better. So welcome to Tag Back, the show where every week we take a look at a blaster from the past to see what it can offer us today in the present, and this time, well, it's this Captain America blaster. Now this one is not complete. It is missing the flap that would cover down over this to complete the shield look, and overall the shield itself is pretty small. Where this picks up is just how it works. Now I'm going to have to take this off because I've already removed the screws out of it and whatnot. This is just a piece of plastic. This is the main blaster, which I think looks a lot better for what I intend to use this for anyway. And the way this thing works is pretty darn cool. So you can reload it through the back. So obviously you put the strap on there and it does fit adults, and the grip is a little small, but it fits me because I have tiny baby hands. But the way you would reload this is from the rear, which is really, really interesting and honestly pretty darn cool. It makes you feel like you're doing something futuristic loading it like this, and it makes it a little bit easier than a front loader in my opinion. And then once you've got your darts in there, you pull this back, and these barrels shoot out the front, which is darn cool. They're not like symmetrical at all. In fact, I don't think any of them are. None of the ones I have ever seen have ever had the barrels be symmetrical. They're always tilting out like that. I don't know if that's just a flaw in the design or whatnot. We will open one of these up just for sanity's sake, but I will mention that I got this one and the other one both from Captain Xavier, who knew I wanted these blasters for some time because I want to see if I can't make it a little bit useful. If I can make them shoot like 40, 50 feet, I would say this is a useful blaster, but getting them to that point is going to be a very big challenge, and I don't think it's even possible. But obviously, we've extended the barrels. You would hold it like this, and as you might have guessed, this large red lever right here is, in fact, well, it works like a Snapfire. So it's semi-automatic or double action, however you choose. So when I squeeze in this lever, it's going to shoot out a dart. And that one honestly rocketed with some force, and it shot that one, which is weird. That's not normally how this thing works, but if I squeeze it again, well, already having some issues. Now, what you just saw was what it's supposed to do after it's empty. Put these darts back in there. There we go. There we go. There we go. And then one more shot, and now when I press it in the 5th time, it retracts closed like that. I'll give it one more chance to show you that. And then one more. And honestly, at that point, I think you can realize why this blaster is just so freaking cool. That is a lot of fun. There is more value in this thing right there, and it doing that with the semi-automatic feature, double action, which is very rare for Nerf to do. And then, of course, the whole flipping. Oh, that's so cool. And now you can see why I wish it just shot a little bit better, because if it did, that would be something useful. I mean, you could have this, you know, kind of, it's almost like a punching gauntlet kind of looking thing. It just works so well for what it is, but of course, the performance is dismal, and it's meant to be. It advertised a range of up to 20 feet, and even angled, you're going to have trouble reaching that. And, well, I guess the best way to explain why that is to open one of these things up. So I'm going to open up the one I have over here, which looks like the gears became misaligned, but we'll open that up so we can fix it and also show off the internals. So I will be back in just a moment. And I'm already starting to regret my decision to take this thing apart and try to fix it, but whatever, I have to because I want to have both of them, because of course it would be fun to have, well, two. Now, this is that one plate that the grip is connected to, and as you can see, all this does is rotate that square peg ever so slightly. That square peg matches up with this, which causes this to push forward, which would push this section right here with this extension spring, which pulls back the plunger head. This is the plunger, we'll get back to that, which rotates this, which will obviously cause this to pull back, then slip, which causes air to go through the hose into the barrels, where there's a smart AR system. Yeah, as you can see. Or is it a smart AR? No, yeah, it's a smart AR system. So yeah, basically everything they could do to tone this thing down, but there's so much little crazy engineering in here, and it's such a cool little blaster that I can forgive it for that relatively easily. But of course, obviously there's some durability issues with this system. We'll just put it like that. Now, if I pull this back, it will prime the barrels forward like that. And then if I... that, I mean, it's not really working all that well, but I can try to mash this up again, which is a lot easier said than done. Come on. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Not quite how it's supposed to, so in order to fix this, I'm going to have to start taking these things apart to get to the gears to see if I can't reset the gears manually. Well, as you can imagine, that wasn't a very pleasant experience, but I did somewhat get it to work. Now, to kind of push that down, but if I do that, it does indeed pull these out, and then if I let that go, it'll reset. Now, the way I did that, honestly, wasn't that difficult, although it does take some patience because these parts are all spring-loaded and nasty. I'm going to remove that, and as long as this is pushed forward, this piece will clear everything. Now, originally there is this piece on here with this spring-loaded catch. I've already taken that out, so that's going to be fun to try to get back in there, but that's not your main culprit. With the main culprit comes from these, and I'm only going to take off this one because the reset is the same for both. If I take that off, come on, there we go. You'll notice that this gear right here kind of matches up, but what happened was that this gear was like this, and that's no good. This gear has to be on. So if you notice, there is a spring and a peg. At the bottom of this, there's a spot for that spring, a spot for that peg. So you're going to put this on top of there, but you'll notice that's obviously not lined up. It's the gearing is going past, so you have to twist it until the last tooth is resting right there. And the easiest way to do that is to just pull out this gear right here and then socket that back in. But this has a tendency to want to pop out, so you'll want to put this plate back on there and then screw everything together. And that's how you reset the gearing on that whole process. And you have to do that to both sides since both of them happen to jump out. Now, I'm going to put the rest of this together and make sure it works. But from what I've tested, that should work fine. The main issue's got to be getting that catch back on there. However, it's just a catch. It's just like any catch on any blaster. It's just going to take a little bit of effort to get that back on there. But it's going to obviously only move in one direction, forward and, horizontally in this case. So I'm going to get that back together, and then we'll talk about the mod potential. One little final walkthrough of the internals here before I button it up. The first piece you're going to want to take out is the whole priming slide, which when it's pushed all the way forward does clear the gearing just fine. No issues there. And then, just unscrew that screw right there because you don't need to take the priming slide apart. Once you get that out, undo everything. The catch and everything was pretty easy to put in there. So no issues right there. And now it is functioning. So if I pull that out, does actually match up, and then when I press in that catch, it springs back together. And these things do have a tendency to kind of get pushed a little hard, because there's lots of little moving parts in there, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's very over-engineered, but remarkably cool at the same time. So, not bad. For a mod, there is a couple of things. Now, as far as I know, these are smart ARs in here, so removing the air restrictors probably isn't a good idea. However, one thing you could do is this is the power of the entire blaster, and this is a pretty beefy spring, but it's meant for kids. So, if you really wanted to, I'm not saying do it, it is connected to metal, but you could swap this out for something that's a little bit beefier, which would give you more performance gain. I also am thinking of, and I'm not going to do it in this video, but when this thing is ejected, like so, I would remove the dart pegs for sure, because that does cause a little bit of momentum loss, and also a tiny bit of brass, probably at the front or something like that. If I could get into the back or just re-barrel everything at the front, I'm not quite sure, but it needs just a little bit of brass for a better dart fit, not too much that it, you know, because there obviously isn't a whole lot of power in there, but just a little bit more buildup in the foam would give it a lot better consistency and make it a lot more worthwhile. My ultimate goal is to figure out a way to have either a thumb lever that works with this, which honestly wouldn't be that hard, and the only reason I want that is so I can hold a blaster with this strapped to my arm and then decide I want to fire it with it flipping up and doing its thing. Because while this is really cool, I can't obviously hold another blaster, so the only other thing I can think of is down here having some kind of hinge, which actually that's not a bad idea, or just replacing this whole mechanism together, which I could 3D print if I wanted to, and I might design something for that. This little rail right here is just for the other toys in the set. It's meant to mount like a G.I. Joe style missile launcher, which is nothing important for what we want in this hobby, but it was a cool little thing at the time, and honestly, I kind of wish they did more stuff like this, although you can see why they don't. It has a tendency to jam up and fail, and then of course the worst thing is it's not very powerful, but they kind of designed it to be such, so it's a lot better than that Spider-Man thing by a long shot. I actually want to get this to work, and if I can get about 40 feet angled out of it, I would be super happy to use this in a war, because I could just have it on my forearm and then work it as I please, but there's going to have to be some concessions made with the design, and that's where everything kind of falls apart. There's really no other good way to get this working. I have tried to shoot myself with this thing when it's closed to see if it would shoot you, but it does twist the tubing, it seems like, so no airflow actually goes down in it. It's an interesting little blaster. It does work right or left-handed. It's just kind of awkward because if you have it on this hand, you're squeezing downwards, and if it's on this hand, you're squeezing that way. And I believe it's meant to be on this hand, but I'm not a massive Captain America fan. I'm just going by if you're right-handed and you use a shield. You know what I mean? It's darn cool, and it's well worth remembering. If you do pick one up and it is broken in the way I just demonstrated, it should be fixable as long as the gearing inside, you know, isn't broken, so you might want to shake it and see if you hear any kind of loose plastic. But overall, I like it, and I do plan on trying to do something with this in the terms of making some forearm armor for it. I'm not going to keep the shielding, so I'm probably going to get rid of a lot of this extra plastic on it, but it looks really darn cool without any of that stuff. I'm very smitten with how this thing works, because it just looks so darn cool. There we go. I mean, look at it. It's so cool. It's almost perfect. But yeah, it's not very good, and I just want to talk about it because, like the Spider-Man thing, it's meant for kids, and a lot of people gave me flack for it. So you're too hard on it, it's meant for kids, and I get that, but when the Spider-Man thing's $20 and this was $20 and there was a lot more effort put into this, you can see why I think things are kind of going on the cheaper ends. But let me know what you think about the Captain America Shield blaster down in the comment section below. And of course, I'm Walcom S7's hands, and I hope to see you in an entirely different video. Hopefully one sometime in the near future that includes these shooting the way I want them, but I think that's going to be one heck of a... it's going to be a really, really difficult project, so we'll see how that goes.